Yeah, what's happening? We about to bring that action. Gotta hold it down for my Seattle Kraken. Hey, we going beneath the waves. We going beneath the waves. Get it hype, step onto the ice. Ready for some action. Release the Kraken. Hey, we going beneath the waves. Going beneath the waves.
Welcome, everyone, to the Beneath the Waves podcast, your weekly source of all things Seattle Kraken and beyond. I'm Derek.
I'm Heather.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Matt.
It's episode 20, and we've got a great show for you this week, including all the Kraken news, a breakdown of last week's games, a check-in with Coachella Valley, and we'll take a look around the hockey world in the sound table. Heather, why don't you let us know what's happened this week with the Seattle Kraken?
Well, thankfully, and probably to your ears too, there's not a ton of news this week since trade deadline is gone past and we just have a few things to talk about. But for roster moves, we have a really exciting one. Jani Nyman was called up from Coachella Valley on March 10th. This is literally one day after Alex and I were like singing his praises. We could not stop talking about him on the podcast, saying he'd be up soon. And then the next day it was like, there he was. So just saying, we knew. You know, Dan Bylsma basically was saying about him making his NHL debut was his message was just go out and leave no doubt about what kind of player you are and what you're good at. And I think that he's done a great job of showing that so far. So I'm just so excited to see him up. And with Jani Nyman too, that means he did make his NHL debut. That was on March 12th. And that same day, he got his first NHL goal. So he's actually the first Kraken draft prospect to score in their first NHL game, which is such a cool milestone to think about, such a cool like stake in the ground for him. So just super stoked for Jani Nyman and for the future for him. Like I think he's just going to be amazing. Alex, did you want to add to that about Nyman?
I just find it ironic that we were talking about Nyman. You know, we've talked about him every single week, being like he is that player. You need to keep an eye on him. If you're not watching Coachella, get on it because Nyman is that player. He gets called up first game, gets his first NHL goal on the power play, and I think one of the things that I very much mentioned was how lethal he was on the power play in Coachella, and he's brought that to the NHL. And we've been screaming out for a power play specialist. He's only 20. But in 3 NHL games, he's got 2 power play goals. It's exactly what we've been missing on the power play. Special player, highly touted in my opinion, and is another Finnish prodigy that we're going to be seeing on the Kraken for years to come, I think, but definitely someone to keep an eye out because it's exciting times for our up-and-coming players, and Nyman is going to be one of them.
Yeah, so I'm stoked for him. I think he's actually earned a couple extra games to be up because I think Dan, after the first game, they asked, how many more games is he going to be here? And he was like, 1 more game. But he's played so well. I think he's earned a couple.
Just another thing in regards to Nyman is because of his contract and his age, no matter the amount of games that he plays this season, he's going to burn a year on his entry-level contract. So he could play the rest of the season with the Kraken and go back down to Coachella because he was on the roster after the deadline, or he can go down at any point. So he's already burned that year of his entry-level contract. So do you let him thrive with Seattle, or do you send him back down? It's up to management. But if he's still firing the way that he's playing, keep him up with Seattle. Let him go down to Coachella during the playoffs and let him tick at that point. But yeah, just a note on his contract. Regardless on how many games he plays, he's already burned a year.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's important to note because we always talk about these players coming up and is that, it's the battle of do they burn a contract? Do they not? So it's kind of exciting to not have that be a factor actually because they can make that choice of is he going to play? Is he not? And, it depends, what they want to do in Coachella too. Like, always want the guys up with the big club, but at the same time, Coachella is working in their playoff spots and, they're suffering. We'll get to that in a little bit. They're suffering a little bit without him. So we'll see what they do. But either way, excited to see him up for as many games as we get to see him. Also in the news, just want to talk about a couple of other quick milestones here. So Brandon Montour, first of all, he was named the NHL third star of the week this week, and for very good reason. So he recorded 4 points in the Canadiens game, which matched the record that he himself set on October 29th for most points in a game by a defenseman for the Kraken. So there's that. Second, he also scored the fastest goal to begin overtime in NHL history at just 4 seconds, also during the Canadiens game. And he also has 15 goals this season, and that's a new franchise record for defensemen on the Kraken. So Brandon Montour's contract looking pretty sweet, at least this season. So I love to see it though.
Yeah,
Here.
you could say that the Montour contract being so good probably kind of like balances out how bad the Stevenson contract was.
Okay.
I honestly just love the way that Montour's been playing. And, you know, he has 38 points a season, so some might argue that he's still not worth the seven million that he's being paid, but he is the Kraken's best defenseman, like by far. Like you could argue Vince Dunn is up there, but in my opinion, like Montour has really taken over the role as the number one defenseman on the Seattle Kraken, and he is reliable both defensively and clearly as an offensive. He's definitely a lethal threat offensively. So, 4 points against
Yeah.
the Canadiens is
Oh,
one thing. And then also, getting the game winner 4 seconds into overtime. Like I didn't get to sit down. Like I went to
Mm-mm.
go, I went to go get some water and I was like, oh, I'll just go sit down. And I was still up in the kitchen when they scored. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that's amazing. So hats off to Brandon Montour.
yeah, I was gonna say, you kind of mentioned it, Alex, but like he did kind of like fall off throughout the season. He started out really hot, our Monty Mania stuff was going, and then he sort of fell off. But I think that when people talk about that, you need to remember that like Vince Dunn was also out, so there's a lot more pressure on him, a lot more like defensive, lockdown on him and what he can do. When Dunn is back in the lineup, it allows them both to do more. So I think we're seeing that as of late.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was also thinking about, I think it was Mike Benton who shared that, once the trade deadline was kind of, over and the dust was clearing and everything, it was Jordan Eberle, Brandon Montour, and Matty Beniers who pulled the team together and had sort of like a conversation. And I thought that was also really telling because obviously Montour is making a difference, not just on the ice, but also in the locker room as well, which I think is really cool. He's a veteran player. He should be doing those things, but just the fact that he's also newer to the team and making that kind of a difference, I really like that about him too. And I think you see that when you're watching them play and how much the players look to him. I think you can see that too, well, during games and practice, all that too.
You start to wonder because with Yanni Gord being dealt, the discussion with Jaden Schwartz being in the final year of his deal, and Adam Larson's another assistant there, but you start to wonder if Brandon Montour is going to get one of the assistants, at the end of the season or leading up into the next season, because you can clearly tell that he is a leader, has that leadership ability not only on the ice but in the dressing room. And I do know that not everybody needs that letter on their jersey, but within a season, he's arguably been one of the best leadership candidates with the Kraken. And there were discussions even before the season began that he could possibly be the captain. There was a lot of talk being like Jordan Eberle's a lock, but there was a lot of discussion about Brandon Montour being the captain, and he was only there for a few months at that time.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. It was kind of a thought I had too as I was reading that, just about him kind of being part of that group. I mean, to me, it makes sense. Like, also interesting, like that it was those three. Like, where was Adam Larson or Jaden Schwartz? Like, I thought about that too. Not that I'm saying they're bad assistants or anything. I'm just saying it was interesting that it was those three too.
It is true because I think there's a lot of leadership, like a lot of there's the vocal leaders and then there's the quiet leaders. So you wonder if Montour, Beniers, and Eberle are more vocal in the dressing room,
Mhm.
whereas like Larson and Schwartz are more quiet leaders. So that might have been the thing.
Yeah.
But there could also just be a changing of the guard. Like, Schwartz and Larson have been assistant captains since the inaugural season. And maybe there is that sense in the dressing room that there is that changing of the tide. We could
Yep.
see alternates switch out next season, and could see just a three set of Aberley's the captain, and Beniers and Montour as assistants moving forward. We could see that it could just be four assistants, but I think we're kind of starting to see like a different identity within the team, and Montour is a heavy piece to that.
Yeah. And I think, identity is something they've struggled with too. We've talked about it a lot. So, and also it could just be that those were the three that were there at the time. It could just be that too. We could be reading into it, but it's just, interesting to think about and look at.
It's what we always do. We always look into things
You have
way
to.
way over, we overcomplicate everything.
Last little piece of news is that the Canadiens game marked the Kraken's eighth multi-goal comeback of the season, which leads the league. So you can take that for what it is, good or bad or whatever. But it's been fun watching them come back and win. So I'll just leave it there.
And like you guys were just mentioning, the lack of identity that the Kraken have had. Matt, did you want to go into something right now?
All right, so coming out of the news, I wanted to have a little post-trade deadline landscape continuation from last week. I had a prompt ready to go last week, but we just had such a lively debate between Alex and Derek about how the trade deadline played out, which I will say was quite masterfully mediated by Heather, keeping those two in line. So great job, you three. But I wanted to say, with Yanni Gourde and Brandon Tanev being traded away last week, that only leaves the following players from our expansion draft and opening day roster, either currently still on the team or still within our system. So we have Jordan Eberle, Jared McCann, Jamie Alexiak, Adam Larson, Cale Fleury, Joey Decord, Jaden Schwartz, Vince Dunn, and Philip Grubauer. Of these 9 players who remain, I am very curious from the three of you who you think is going to be the last OG Kraken standing and why. Now for me, I'm torn between 2 players, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Jared McCann. As Heather said a few weeks ago in our trade deadline keepers segment, I think Canner is one of those up in the rafters players, and I hope that he is a lifer with the Seattle Kraken. This pick gave me a lot of hope a few weeks ago when the trade rumors were starting up, when Jared McCann's name kept coming up, but Ron Francis kept coming back with, we aren't looking to move him at this time. I'm putting a lot of stock in that at this time and hoping that the at this time carries on for a while. I hope that Canner's positive view on Seattle as a home for him and his family and his continued leading performances for this team are things that are going to come together to carry him forward as a very long-time Seattle Kraken.
So, in breaking down the last Kraken standing, I'm going to go with Joey Decord. Recently signed a 5-year contract extension. So, you're looking at him being here to the 2030 season, I believe. We could easily see, at that point, Jordan Eberle is probably going to be retiring at that point. Jamie Olesiak won't be on the team. Adam Larson will most likely be retired. I don't think Cale Fleury will be here much longer past that. Schwartz won't be on the team. Vince Dunn's contract would be expired by that point, so he could just walk during free agency. And for Philip Grubauer, we will probably see a buyout this offseason, which leaves Joey Decord and Jared McCann. Now, there's been heavy talks, at the trade deadline that Jared McCann was taking calls. Kraken weren't shopping him; they were taking calls on him and just being like, "Lose our number," basically, which kind of puts me in the category where I think, Joey Decord's going to be the final Kraken standing from the inaugural season, from the expansion, just because he is in the prime of his NHL career, and not even in his prime. Like, he's just coming up to it because goalies bloom late. So like, we could easily be talking about Joey Decord for the next 7-8 years.
I hope we are. I love Joey. I do think though I'm on the Jared McCann train though for last Kraken standing. I just think I've probably said it too many times. Just I feel like he's our jersey in the rafters guy. Like he is our Kraken guy. Like he's been bounced around so much team to team, and then here he is on the Kraken, like feeling like it's home kind of for him. So I just feel like it's got to be Jared McCann. And I hope I'm right about it because I would really like for him to be around long term. I just think he brings something to the team. And I feel like as we're doing, like we're talking about a little bit of changing of the guard, I do feel like his presence will be more felt as some of the players sort of come and go. And I think he's just a constant and a steady on the team. And I like that about him. So I'm going with Canner.
Yeah, I actually have something that I'm going to bring up about McCann when we talk about these last couple games. But I'm going to go McCann as well. I think his game has some translatability to it. I don't think he necessarily needs to play the way he always has. I think is starting to grow into a different type of game as he gets older, and I think that's going to be good for the Kraken, especially as we start to filter up like younger, hotter studs that are ripping it in left and right. We're gonna need leadership like McCann, and I think also other things that he's starting to bring to the team lately.
I believe I'm the only one that didn't
Oh,
choose McCann, by the way. Like all three of you chose
Mhm.
McCann.
Yeah. Mm.
that is true.
But I wouldn't be sad if it's
Yeah, I
Joey.
think it's between McCann and Decor.
Right? Like
It
I'm not
really
gonna
is.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be upset with that. If he's the last one standing, I'm also happy with that. Like that would be amazing. I also think he's like just a Kraken through and through, you know. I mean, I think about him on the Firebirds still. I can't help it. Like think about him as also a Firebird just because he helped them so much get to the playoffs and take it to game 7 and all of that. So I still think of him that way, but even more so that to me makes him a Kraken because he came up through that system too.
All right. And so this last week we had 3 more Kraken games to talk about. We had Game 66, which was at home against the Montreal Canadiens, where we won 5-4 in overtime. The game Heather was talking about earlier with Montour. Game 67 versus Utah Hockey Club, in which we won that 4-2. And Game 68, which was yesterday as of the date of this recording, where we lost to the Winnipeg Jets 3-2. Now we'll go through and give our talking points. Matt, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I thought that this week was pretty fun, and I just needed to chime in on some of the events that happened. First of all, the Montreal game was an absolute blast. I would say this season, that's probably my second favorite game that's gone down behind the Vancouver Canucks Disney movie style comeback that we had earlier in this year. Before the game started, I tweeted out saying that Jani Nyman was going to have a star-making performance like Shane Wright did last year when he got called up and scored 4 goals in 4 games. Well, he has 2 goals in the 3 games that Jani Nyman has played, which I think is a pretty solid start to his NHL career. I can maybe, just maybe, make some good takes sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. And let me tell you, in addition to this, it was a very good week to be a jersey that is hanging in Matt's closet. Starting off with my guy, Jordan Eberle, and I love seeing him get into back to form that he was at before. 3 assists against Montreal, 2 assists against Utah, and 1 assist against the Jets were just fantastic to see. I absolutely despise that for 2 of these 3 games this week, I had to sit through the TSN broadcast, being up here playing against Canadian teams for 2 of these games, but they were giving him lots of props for his movement and his playmaking, and his comeback from an injury this season continues to just be one of my absolute favorite stories that has come up so far this season. And Brandon Montour, what is there more that we can say about this guy? Long ago, when we recorded our free agency thoughts way back pre-pod, I blindly said that I was going to be a Brandon Montour guy, and am I ever glad that I did say that and that I committed to buying a jersey with his name and number after his performances this week. 3 goals and 3 assists in our 3 games, setting the OT goal record and tying the any period scoring record. I said a few weeks ago in a game against the Blues that Jordan Kyrou has to have our number with how frequently he's scoring on the Kraken, and I feel that we can make this same sort of claim about Brandon Montour and the Habs, as he has this season scored 5 goals and has 3 assists against them in 2 games. Monty became the 3rd defenseman to record 2 4-point games this season, with both of them coming against the Canadiens, so that's really good to see. And also seeing him named to the NHL's 3 Stars of the Week, the first Kraken appearance on that list in nearly 2 years, is an awesome sight as well. Lastly, and I have to gripe a little bit here, after that Montreal game, I posted our Monty Mania graphic on Reddit with some of the stats from the night, and it was pretty well received. People loved the graphic, people loved his performance, all that. However, one user replied saying, quote, "Monty's contract makes up for Stevenson's," end quote. And I just want to say, and this is all in caps in my notes, so if it doesn't come across, just know it's all in caps, how are we still so butthurt and hung up on this guy? Chandler Stevenson is the current leader for most points over a 3-season points king, Jared McCann. He leads in assists by a pretty solid margin. He recorded 4 assists this week. And in the post-game presser, Dan Bilesma said that the game-winning play against Montreal was actually drawn up by Stevie. And I'm not sure what you guys think, but to me, Stevenson is making Stevenson's worth it. If we're still getting hung up on saying, oh, this contract's going to look so bad in 5 years, let's worry about that in 5 years. Let's enjoy the now while he's being a playmaker for us and get as much joy out of Stevie as we can get.
So these first two games, the Canadiens game, first of all, like what a game. Before I even go into like how it ended, I love when we get to see rookies do their lap. And I love his parents, Jani's parents being there, Jani Nyman's parents being there. I love him playing. I love him scoring a goal. The celebration from his parents after he scored that goal, like that video is amazing. I love those things. Those, like, that's what sports is for me. Like, I get in my feels about that just because I think it's amazing to watch because those parents were with him from like the moment he started skating, right? And they've sacrificed so much for him to get there. And I just think it's so cool to watch that come to fruition for them. So really cool. To take it to overtime, scoring twice in those like last 10 minutes, that was exciting. Like, you just can't help but like jump up and just be so excited to be a Kraken fan at that point. The OT goal from Montour was incredible. And the setup from Stevenson, like one of the best things I've ever seen, I think. Like that was, it was amazing. So most of all, though, they came out swinging in that one, even rang some pucks off the post in the first. So like this was a game they were stoked to come out and play. And even though the Canadiens scored those 4 goals in the second, and I think we all kind of slumped in our collective couches, the Kraken came back and the win was just thrilling. Not being super thrilled with Shane Wright being bumped to the 4th line. But you know what? The thing is, though, Coach Bylsma keeps saying that he doesn't really number lines, and they kind of had to find a way to slot Jani Nyman in. So for me, I just kind of have to let it be what it is and just roll with it because I think, as we're seeing these younger players come up and we're seeing, things change, that's just going to be the nature of it. So I'm not going to be too upset about it, but I was a little bit upset about it because that feels like a personal attack on me when Shane Wright gets bumped. But so the Canadiens game, just so much to say about that one. The Utah game, Grew was great, a really amazing game. And I also think he had a great response when they asked him about coming back from Coachella and having his time there. He said it was a time to find his rhythm. That had been hard since he wasn't getting starts in Seattle. I mean, he wasn't getting starts in Seattle, for a reason. We understand that. But I'm so happy that he did play those games in Coachella and was able to come back, and he's been playing really great. So really happy for Grew because I want to see him do well. I do. I want to see him do well. We all want to see him do well. Ellie Tolvanen scored his 20th goal of the season in that one. So that's fun. And I think, Utah tried to tilt the ice. They take advantage of that really well. That's what Utah does. But the Kraken did not give in. And Canner had that really great hit. And I feel like that changed everything. That was like when the switch was flipped. And I loved that. So to me about Jared McCann, I loved that part. And then last game, the Jets game, questionable hit on Shane Wright from Turbo, but not surprised because Turbo did that for us for 4 years, right? Like is what it is. That's how he is. But I did love Cartier going after Turbo immediately in response. So I'm like, okay, so the lines have been drawn here. Like we know where our loyalties are, and they're with the Kraken. So that is what it is. But I just thought it was kind of funny there. 2 goals in 3 games for Jani Nyman. We love that. And you know what? I still think taking the Jets, arguably the best team in the league right now, to OT is amazing. I still think that's really cool. Like, we've seen it before, and I just think that we can hang with them, and that's something that we should really be proud of. So love that for him. Riker looking a little rough these last few games. I'll say that. He was a healthy scratch for the which game was it? For the Utah game, I think he was a healthy scratch. And then he did come back, but he had an assist on Mikey's goal, but he also was the reason for the goal in the last 20 seconds of the first period also. So it's kind of like, so I hope he finds his footing. He's still developing. It's nothing to panic about, but yeah, I think those are my thoughts on those 3 games we had. Fun hockey, consistent hockey. Not much to really complain about, to be honest. This is what we want as we're closing out the season, is just some fun games to watch and some younger players stepping up. So I'm happy.
Absolutely. I think that's a great take. I think all those are great takes by you, Heather. A couple things I wanted to touch on throughout these last 3 games. The Kraken have just found themselves offensively these last 3 games. Back-to-back 3.87 expected goals for with the Canadiens and with Utah. Unreal that we're posting that back-to-back. And then with the Jets, we beat them in expected goals and post 3.2 expected goals for. Against arguably like literally the team with the most points in the NHL. So pretty crazy. I think it kind of goes to what we were talking about. Was it last week with Ron Francis saying, this team's a little bit out of the playoffs? We do hang with teams sometimes, and it does feel at certain points of the season like we are a couple pieces away. At other points, it feels like we're 15 pieces away for sure. But right now, I agree with Ronnie right now. Couple things. I did go to the Utah game, and I went to the Winnipeg game. At the Utah game, my biggest takeaway, I want Jared McCann to move to the fourth line, okay? I want him to be a fourth line center, at least with the current setup that we have. If you put him on the wing, that's a different story. But as a center, I think he should be on the fourth line. Here's how I think we should restructure the centers that we used for the past couple games. Stevenson first, Wright second, Beniers third, McCann fourth. I think that would be a great ordering of the centers. And Beniers definitely does not deserve first line center minutes. I think everyone in their right mind agrees with that. You just watch him out there, give his line mates to a different center like Shane Wright, and they will explode. Beniers is dragging that line down, in my opinion. McCann, his game is like transitioning before, as I feel like when we lost Yanni, when we lost Tanev, our grittiness, physicality, it was almost like non-existent. Now it's even more non-existent. McCann has been that guy to like get in people's faces. He tried to fight Clayton Keller in the Utah game. I was just like, what is this? McCann, like we haven't seen him be his snipey self this year. And I think it might be good for him to transition into, blocking shots, laying hits, fighting people, like just go out there and be an animal like Turbo was, like Yanni was, because we don't have those guys anymore. Lastly, at the Winnipeg game, two things. Newman's goal, I was sitting right in front of it. Absolutely unreal shot. Sniping Hellbuck in your what, third game? At 20 years old is crazy. Like, it's wild to me that this guy's like oscillating between Coachella and in the NHL right now because he seems like he has an unreal shot. If he's in the right position, someone gets the puck to him, that's gonna be good all the time. And then lastly, Turbo, coming back. Whew. When I saw him run at Shane Wright, that is the most angry I've been in a hockey game in a very long time, and I lost it, and my blood was boiling, and I was screaming. I lost my voice. I started a boo for Turbo in our section, and it got so much traction. Everyone was booing him, and I felt so good booing Tanev, and I'm like, thank you that you're not on our team anymore, and you're out here. We can we can hit you back. But I was talking with my parents before that game. Like, what do you think Tanev's gonna do? Like, there's no way he gets along with all of his teammates while he's on the Kraken. He just has a screw loose like all the time. There's no way at practice he's not like, oh, I would really love to run this guy right now, but I'm not allowed to. I think he also needs to make a statement with Winnipeg. Being on Winnipeg, he doesn't have like a solid spot there. Like he needs to make a statement. The team's gonna go to like the Stanley Cup, so when he plays his former team, he needs to show them like, yeah, no, against my former team, yeah, I'll run their prized possession Shane Wright. Like I don't even care. But no, if your blood was not boiling, you were not watching that game. Because Tana, man, oh, I'm an anti-Tana fan now. Oh,
Yeah, I was pissed. And you know how much I like Tana. You know how much I've talked about liking Turbo, and I'm pissed. He's persona non grata to me now. You don't do that to Shane Wright.
and
The
then
amount
looking
of
around and seeing all the Tanev jerseys just everywhere in the crowd, and then people are booing Tanev. It's like, what is this reality?
the amount of people that I've seen say this, and I'm one of those included, is you love Tanev when he plays on your team, but he is a player that you hate that you have to play against. And we saw it clear as day when we played Winnipeg.
Yep.
So in regards to my takes on these games, Montreal Canadian game, fantastic game by the Kraken. The fact that they were really able to dominate that game. I'm just going to kind of break it all up. I'm not really going to specifically talk about each game because I feel like if I'm doing that, I'm going to be beating a dead horse. But some key points: Jordan Eberle, 6 assists in 3 games. Hats off to that. That's a fantastic, 3-game pace. Brandon Montour, I don't need to really say much more. We've been talking about him like crazy. Jani Nyman, I do want to say, yes, 2 power play goals in 3 games. Both the power play goals have come from the same spot. So I'm going to echo exactly what I said previously. Power play specialist, we need that. He is a player who just shoots the puck. Same thing when he played with the Firebirds. He can get assists, but he's primarily a goal scorer, but we desperately need one of those. So I'm very excited with him. I hope he stays for the remainder of the season, unless the Firebirds are in desperate need for his help, because we'll get to that. Just another take, Eli Tolvanen, getting his 20 and 21st goal of the season this year. Really happy with that. He now leads the team in goals. So I didn't have that on my list at all. That's pretty great. Shane Wright being bumped to the 4th line, I'm a little salty about it. I know Dan's talked about, well, I don't really view lines as 1 to 4, but I'm still salty about it because Shane Wright, as Derek's mentioned, as Heather's mentioned, it arguably deserves top line minutes, even second line minutes. So the fact that he's kind of getting done dirty on the 4th line is upsetting to in my own opinion, because in my eyes, if you're going to be looking at putting Nyman somewhere, sit Berkey in the press box. That I really do mean that, because I'd rather see, like a Berkey McCann. No, sorry, a Nyman McCann right line. I think that would be such a lethal line. So there's that. I have to give it to Philip Grubauer, and look at Derek's going to be shocked because I said that, but he played a great game. He looked like a breakdancer he looked like the Australian breakdancer in the Olympics, but like overall he did fantastic. So I can't really, fault him for that. So, take the wins, because, he's won 2 games straight and he's only has 7 wins on the season. So I have nothing bad to say about Gru. If he can do this until the end of the season, then, so be it. I'll be very happy. And then finally, going back to the Winnipeg game, we contended with probably the best team in the NHL. So that's one thing. It's a shame that we are doing this when there's no stress on us. You kind of wish that this team could do this for a full 82. And clearly, I think over the last 2 seasons, we really noticed this team relax after the trade deadline, because they know that games don't matter. So they're playing at a level of that they can compete at, which doesn't help our draft status, which is kind of sucks. But hopefully they can figure this out, and next season they can jump in and play the full 82. And Tanev's number 1 enemy. No, maybe number 2. I think Kel McCarr is probably still up there, and Tyler Myers. So maybe number 3. Number 3, but I don't even think it's Tanev. I think like Turbo's ghost got out and just started to wreak havoc on Shane Wright there. So I love the fact that both Riker Evans and Karts stepped in there and said, you're not going to touch this guy. And arguably, I want to just say those are 3 Coachella boys there. They stick together. So that's one thing that I really like to see there. So lots of positives over this week. I couldn't say anything negative. I think the only negative I have is that Shane Wright's playing 4th line minutes, and that's upsetting me, because I think that man deserves to play 20 minutes a night, and he's not getting that yet. He will, but
I'm impatient though.
Just got to be patient, apparently. This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. But that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out, and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, new customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are property of the NHL and its teams. Copyright NHL 2025, all rights reserved. But we are going to talk about something different. We are going to go south, and we're going to talk about the Coachella Valley Firebirds and our desert dialogues. So this week, it's kind of funny. We kind of switched this week. Normally, we talk about positives with Coachella and negatives with the Kraken. Well, we're gonna change things up here because Coachella's been a little bit of a different place this week, especially. So on March 12th, they played the Colorado Eagles in a 4-1 loss. The Firebirds are going to have some adjusting to do with many players up with the Kraken after the NHL trade deadline. So they did call up defenseman Charlie Wright and forward Cade Bouchard from the KC Mavericks.
Maybe.
Cade, if you're listening, you're probably not, but if I butchered your last name, I am sorry. Also, Seska is out day to day with a lower body injury. Ben Myers scored the lone goal for the Firebirds on this one. Just kind of a rough go on things as they figure out the new lines, etc. But that's the way that the system works. They're missing Nyman's goal scoring ability. That's one thing I will highlight is they do look a little bit lost without their goal scorer.
They played March 14th at the Bakerfield Condors. That was a 2-1 overtime loss. A little bit of a better adjustment in this game. The call-ups from KC were also available as well. So that helps because that first game kind of after they called them up, they weren't there yet. So that helps, kind of fill out the lines a little bit better, And as we as Kraken fans know, it just takes time to settle in after a shakeup. We were seeing it right after the trade deadline too. And as they were holding people like Turbo out. So losing, like Alex just said, losing their top scorer, Jani Nyman, that makes it really tough. David Goyette scored their only goal in this one, and I just found out that his nickname is Goisy, so I thought that was fun. I loved learning little tidbits like that. They held them to a score of 1-1 going into OT. They just couldn't put the game away. So not really a bad showing or anything. They're just working on figuring it out. They're going to have some growing pains here while they adjust. So not upset about it. We'll talk about standings. They're still in good place, so not super worried about it.
And the final game this week was on the 15th of March, and it was against the Henderson Silver Knights in a 2-1 loss. Right before the game, it was announced that Ben Myers is day-to-day with an upper body injury, so he will be unable to play in this one. For all you Canadian listeners, that's above the waist. That's an upper body injury. Lower body is below the waist, as our healthcare system, as per Heather, is drastically off. But Villiel Tavainen scored first to give the Firebirds the lead in the first. But the Silver Knights scored less than a minute later, very Kraken-esque. The Silver Knights scored again in the second, and that was the game winner for Henderson. Not a ton of talk about in this one. But some players are just consistently notching points, like Jagger Ferguson and Tucker Robertson having the assist on the only goal. And it was also Jagger Ferguson's 19th assist on the season. So he's quietly having a good season with Coachella, especially for his age, but also I would say his size. He's not a big guy, so he's quietly doing a good job down there. I don't think he's going to be a candidate to be called up with the Kraken next season, but if he can bulk up a bit, you could see him in a year or two, maybe sometime after the deadline, depending where we're at next season. But definitely keep an eye on Jagger as well.
Yeah, I agree. He's also really fun to watch too. So just one of those players that I hope he gets a chance. It's just going to be a little bit of time, but he is on the smaller side, so it's going to be a little bit. But to watch the Firebirds this week, they play Wednesday, March 19th versus the Henderson Silver Knights, and they'll be wearing the Fuego jerseys during warmups because it's his birthday, and those are really cool jerseys. We were talking about that in our group chat earlier. They're really fun. They also play Friday, March 21st at the Calgary Wranglers, and then Sunday, March 23rd again at the Calgary Wranglers. Our top Firebirds this week, with Jani Nyman out, we got some new contenders here. So Ben Myers has 30 points in his 47 games played. Logan Morrison has 35 points in his 59 games played. And Max Lajoie has 32 points in his 58 games played.
Now the AHL standings have changed a bit, and it's this division is absolutely crazy. So Coachella is currently sitting in third in the Pacific Division with 71 points in 59 games played. The Ontario Reign are in second with 72 points in their 57 games played. And at the top of the division right now are the Colorado Eagles with 76 points in 57 games played. Abbotsford Canucks and Calgary Wranglers are right on the heels of the Firebirds with 69 points apiece. It's all over the place. This division is absolutely insane. This is the type of division where every game matters. You're talking about, you lose a game, team's going to jump you. So it's Coachella hasn't secured a playoff spot, but they can probably within the next couple games as long as games go their way. So if you haven't subscribed to watch Firebird games, definitely get on it, because the end of the season is going to be great to watch. And if they do secure playoffs, Firebird playoff hockey is probably some of the best. If you haven't watched it over the last couple of years, you're definitely missing something, because it's a lot of fun.
So fun. I even watched some when I was on vacation last season, and I was like, Game 7, I was like, we have to watch this because it's just so fun. They lost, but it was still so fun.
Still not over the fact that, the Hershey Bears have knocked them out in the Calder Cup finals 2 years in a row. I'm still so upset for Joey 2 years ago, and I'm still so upset for Drieger last year.
Me too.
And that's going to take us to the sound table. The Sound Table is our weekly look around the hockey world outside of the Seattle Kraken organization, and we have quite a bit to go through this week. Starting off with one of the biggest news items this week, Florida Panthers defenseman Aaron Ekblad was suspended for 20 games without pay last Monday. According to his statement, Ekblad said, "I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking the proper medical and team personnel." Ekblad is a pending UFA and will miss the remainder of the regular season. He has 3 goals and 33 points in 56 games with the Panthers this season. We talked quite a bit about it last week with the Mikko Rantanen trade down to Dallas. We had a little bit more light shed on it this week. During press availability on Monday, Hurricanes GM Rod Brind'Amour said, quote, "When Rantanen showed up, he said, 'There's 4 teams I'll go play for, and you're not one of them,' end quote." According to Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, these 4 teams were Dallas, Florida, Toronto, and Edmonton. This just seems like yet another flub on this whole trade that had Rantanen playing with the Hurricanes for a very short number of games and them shedding off a whole lot of their players and picks, with the team not doing their due diligence in making sure that this trade would pay off in the long term. Utah Hockey Club goaltender Connor Ingram will be away from the ice for an indefinite period while he receives care from the Players Assistance Program of the NHL and NHLPA. In a statement about the situation, Ingram said, quote, "For those of you that don't know, earlier this season I lost my mother to breast cancer. After trying to make a return to playing, I have come to realize that I am not myself. At this point in my life, I need to put my health first and take the proper time I need away to come back at 100%. Though many view this program as a resource for substance abuse, I want to recognize all that they do. I am once again privileged to have access to their network of world-class health professionals to hopefully avoid long-term negative effects of putting your health second. With the program's assistance, I look forward to getting the medical help I need and return to a happy and healthy life." End quote. I think that this was a very admirable thing for Connor to come forward with this statement. And like he said, the system's usually set up to or referred to as one that involves substance abuse problems and things like that. So I think it's very good of him to show what else this player assistance program can do. And we hope all the best for him in his journey through this. Now, is Connor Bedard the new bad boy of hockey? In back-to-back games this week, the former number 1 draft pick and Calder Trophy winner served 10-minute misconduct penalties and was ejected from the game on Saturday against the Canucks following a scuffle towards the end of the game. On Thursday, against the Sharks, Bedard was given a 10-minute misconduct for unsportsmanlike conduct when he was charged with abuse of an official after disagreeing with a non-call and yelling at the refs from the bench. In some fun Seattle news this week, the annual Oops All Goalies took place on Saturday night at the Kraken Community Iceplex. The event featured 70 goalies across 2 sheets of ice. Last year, there were 30 people in attendance, so great growth there. And there were appearances made by Joey Decord, who dropped the ceremonial puck at the start of the game, and Bowie was there as well. Perhaps my favorite highlight from @NerdSalmon on X, who is the organizer of the event, shared a video of the last 2 minutes of the game which showed a jailbreak of every goalie flooding the ice. It was a great moment to see. Go ahead and check it out on X if you haven't done so yet. And We often think that things are pretty bad for the Seattle Kraken right about now, but at least we're not the San Jose Sharks, who were officially the first team eliminated from playoff contention on Sunday as a result of the St. Louis Blues winning their game. Hopefully they can ride out these last few games before they start looking forward to the golf courses, as they will not be playing playoff hockey this year. But let me tell you, the Seattle Kraken are not that far behind them. Now, we usually cover AHL news when it comes to the Firebirds, but I found this story a little bit funny. Dan McKinnon, who is the GM of the Utica Comets, traded his own son, Will, to the Cleveland Monsters. The return for this trade? Just future considerations. Not a player, just future considerations. And I think this is going to lead to Easter dinner being a little more awkward in the McKinnon household in a couple weeks. Speaking of McKinnon, it's milestone time here on the Sound Table. Congrats to Nathan McKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche, who recorded his 1,000th career NHL point against the Chicago Blackhawks on Monday. He is the 100th player to reach this milestone. He is also the first player to reach 100 points this season, although Edmonton's Leon Draisaitl was not that far behind, and he caught that 100-point mark a few games later. McKinnon had his Golden Stick ceremony this week, celebrating that 1,000th point achievement, with Colorado Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog coming out to present him with the award. Now, our usual closers here on the Sound Table. The PWHL Takeover Tour made its second last stop of the season in Detroit's Little Caesars Arena on Sunday, with the Minnesota Frost taking on the New York Sirens. The game had a turnout of 14,288 fans, and they saw the Sirens win 4-1. This attendance has claimed the record for U.S. attendance for a women's professional hockey game, so congratulations to Detroit on turning out for that. The league also announced that they reached the total attendance mark of 1 million fans having attended games since the league started. There is one more stop to go in 2 weeks when the tour concludes in St. Louis. And as we always conclude the Sound Table, we have the OV record watch. Alexander Ovechkin now sits at 877 goals, only 8 away from beating Wayne Gretzky's record of 894. He needs to do this in 9 games or less to accomplish that feat faster than Gretzky. And I feel like every time we get closer to reaching this milestone, the more fun things we find out about Alexander Ovechkin. For example, one thing I saw this week was that Ovechkin sent an autographed jersey to former goaltender Pascal Leclerc with the message inscribed on it, "You were number one." Leclerc was who Alexander Ovechkin scored his first 2 NHL goals against, and I think that's a pretty great piece of memorabilia. And that concludes this week's Sound Table. Heather, would you like to let the folks know what we have in our week ahead?
I would love to. So the Kraken are going on the road this week. They play Tuesday, March 18th at the Chicago Blackhawks. That is a 5:30 p.m. Pacific start. They play Wednesday, March 19th at the Minnesota Wild. That's a 6:30 p.m. Pacific start. And then Saturday, March 22nd at the Edmonton Oilers. And it is a 7 p.m. start.
And I'd also like to let you know to mark your calendars for Tuesday, March the 25th. The Kraken will be taking on the Calgary Flames in that game, and we will be streaming this one. Back in January, we did a very successful charity stream for the Humane Society here in my city, and we'll be doing a similar fundraiser to this once again. This time around, we are doing Kraken for Kidneys as we look to raise money for the Kidney Foundation of Canada. Some quick backstory on this one. My wife has been on the transplant list for a kidney transplant for the last several years, and every year in June is the Kidney Foundation of Canada Kidney Walk. So we are finding fun ways to try to raise some money for this cause. So we're going to have the same kind of stipulations that we had in the Humane Society fundraiser. We have money on the line for shots on goal, for goals being scored, for fights, for a shutout if it happens, and each of us here on Beneath the Waves are going to make a BTW pick, and if that player scores at any point during the game, that'll be an extra bonus donation. If you'd like any more information on this, you can reach out to me on Twitter at itsmattbtw, or you can go to bit.ly/btwkidney. Now, Derek, now that all that's out of the way, could you let the people know where they can find us online this week?
Absolutely, Matt. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube, and we will have free shipping on our store available March 20th through the 25th at bit.ly/btw store. Please drop a follow and a 5-star review on the podcast app of your choice. And if you're wondering where to find us, I kind of wanted to end today with the way that the episodes start. So it's at BTWSEA, BTWSEA. All right, BTWSEA. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
We going beneath the waves, going